Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to track one. We're going to be talking about financial analytics and enabling data for finance with Marcelo from RLTYco and Ben from First Water Finance. If you're looking for the other session in track two with SciSense, that'll be in the agenda tab. If you click track two, we have another session going on at the same time if you're more interested in that. Excited to jump into this today. We have a really great session today and some really interesting examples from our customers here. We're going to kick things off with our first guest that I'd like to join us on stage, Marcelo from RLTYco. He's the CFO. They've done something very, very cool with their data and being able to analyze and learn about their finances and accounting. Marcelo, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Billy. Thank you. So I'm the CFO here at RLTYco, and what we do is pretty much help all real estate agents with their needs in terms of financial capital, tax, legal, health. So our main service is provide capital by advancing their commissions. And after that's done, we try to help as much as possible with their tax, the legal, and their healthcare through our partnerships with many other companies, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Really interesting case because every company has finances and accounting books, but your business is also sort of finance, which I think is really interesting. So that's sort of unique. Can you share more about what challenges in that space involved data and why you looked for a solution like CData?
Well, RLTYco is still on a startup phase, so we run on a small team, small budget. I wear many hats here. So I do leading the CPAs, leading the FP&A, and doing the FP&A, leading and reviewing all the underwriting policies and all the deals that we do, controlling the portfolio, and also investor relations. So on that, CData came with possibility to integrate all systems that we have. So we use Salesforce, Power BI, Sage Intacct, and I needed them to talk with one single source of truth, right? Which our choosing was Power BI. We're still on a Microsoft platform, so it's easy. And that's how CData came into us, for us.
Yeah, makes sense. So, really lean startup. You don't have all the resources or money in the world. Had to find a way to connect those systems, learn from them, and sort of analyze your financial data in a way that makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's how we do here. So CData is simple enough to implement by myself without needing any tech team or data engineer. So I just worked with your team to make sure that was working perfectly. And now our C-suite level can access information all the time in pretty much real time if they want.
Yeah, made sense. So some of those key systems, like you said, your Microsoft Shop, Power BI makes sense for your reporting. You've got Sage Intacct, accounting books, Salesforce. Tell me more about why those were important to analyze and why you needed those connected up.
So our main service is the capital, the financial part, right? So we get the agents we need for capital to foment their business and grow. We provide that by advancing their commissions, and we control that in real time with Power BI. We have visibility on the portfolio. We can manage the risk. We see how our portfolio is behaving, our default rates, and that's only possible because we can integrate Sage Intacct and Salesforce, right? That's the source of the information. See, that's the heart and connecting everything. And Power BI is how we visualize.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Sometimes the reporting and insights, it's something executives asked for, it's something they need or sort of want. But it sounds like for you, it's really core to your operations and important for the day-to-day decisions and tasks that you make that surfaced up in Power BI for you.
It's a great question. It's both, actually, because the main day-to-day is our underwriting team having visibility of everything, right? And for me as well, being able to just look through in the morning, see if we have any anomaly on the data or the numbers. Now, on our C level, they do partnership meetings all the time. They're on the field talking with other CEOs and other companies. So I need them to know the numbers in real time. That's how Power BI and CData also help that level, right? We have them with iPads looking through the dashboards as when they're going through a flight or going through a partnership meeting.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I was really surprised when you first told me that Power BI is available on your phone, on your iPad, of course, but having not just Power BI, but really well-connected dashboards and reports to your real-time, sources of truth in Sage Intacct and Salesforce, that's a really powerful thing. I'm sure a lot of finance professionals are familiar with, sending out spreadsheets every week, asking people to read them and understand them, but that's much easier said than done. And being able to deliver it, everyone loves a really beautiful, clean chart and graph and dashboard, right? Being able to deliver that with real connected data is very powerful for you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Because imagine everyone tries to open an Excel file on an iPhone, right? It's just not meant to be. So they work way better with Power BI. So you can see, like, this is one example of a chart that we use to go through our investors, right? Either trying to raise more funds or just doing the quarterly updates. They don't need to carry huge laptops or printouts. They can just bring the iPad, run everyone through the numbers, and that's it.
Yeah, very cool. Very clean solution too. I think it's very interesting, right? Like you're the CFO of this, lean growing startup. You're also having to wear sort of a data engineering hat, sort of a data analyst hat, right? And that's what's being asked of more and more people today is being able to do all these things. So it's really important for you to have the right tool to do that yourself, right? You said you a lot of the times you're the one actually getting in there and setting things up. That's pretty incredible.
I don't even need to do that too often anymore because it's set up with CData. I just run the queries and update everything, and that's done, right? Either for Power BI or either for my management deck through the Excel, adding, doesn't matter. Everything's set up. I click and just run through the numbers, seeing if they updated correctly, what I need to change, if our CPAs did all the bookings we need. So I don't even need to use Sage reports, to be honest.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. That's really, really cool. Thanks for sharing that. Now that you've set this up, as you said, it sort of runs, you don't have to be checking in on it and building it every day. It frees you up to think more strategically and build, value generating projects. What else is on your mind, especially, right, the theme of today is AI. Everyone's talking about AI. What are you thinking about as your role as CFO and how you can sort of implement that for RLTYco?
So I'm trying the Claude MCP that you guys have. We're studying use cases to analyze the trend on the portfolio, not just as a chatbot, but also on a preemptive analyst for us, right? Because my underwriting team, they need to go through the dashboards, they need to analyze, but it could be even better if they just get an email automated from the prompt that we have, and they can go through the findings. So that's what we're trying right now. It's still on test phase, but I'm pretty sure it will be great once we roll out.
Very, very cool. Makes sense, right? Pretty incredible ROI when you sit and think about it, that you're yourself able to do all these things that we just mentioned, and that you already have this foundation, right, which is the name of the conference, to go and now pivot to this AI use case without having to redo your entire stack. That's really cool. Thanks so much, Marcelo, for joining and sharing your story. Earlier today and throughout Foundations, we talk a lot about having CData providing solutions and foundations for companies of many sizes and use cases. Marcelo is a really good example of a very lean startup, very small, not having to operate in a lean environment. I'm really excited to bring on our next guest, Ben, who's taken a completely different approach with his data in the same realm of financial analytics and planning, and excited to dive into more details about why you took that path, why it makes sense for you, and what you've been able to accomplish with data connectivity from CData. So Ben, please give us an introduction of yourself, First Water Finance, and what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Billy. Happy to be here with all of you. I'm the CEO of First Water Finance based out of Houston. We're a team of embedded finance partners that serve emerging and mid-market businesses, helping them deliver on better growth, financing, and transaction outcomes. We like that term, embedded finance partners, because we flexibly embed in their teams, in their systems, in their processes, and in their roadmaps across what they're trying to do across different stakeholders, including investors like private equity.
Makes sense. So you work with a lot of FP&A teams, actually. So you have a lot of experience and firsthand accounts from all of them, what they're struggling with data and trying to figure out themselves.
Yeah, most commonly, a catalyst for our involvement is a new private equity investor into a business, often the first time institutional capital to that business. So we step into a lot of nascent finance functions with lean or minimal FP&A, with a lot of new demands on information flow and forward visibility. So said differently, we tend to be gluttons for punishment.
Cool, makes sense. So for those of you who were in the keynote earlier, you may have seen Ben start to talk about this concept of controlled time. Would love to dive more into that, as well as hear from you what other data challenges you're seeing in the finance space, and what you're hearing from some of your clients in these FP&A teams.
Yeah, so we really try to talk through this concept of controlled time because it's very different from real time in finance. And as we start talking about AI and you talk about something like MCP, which is getting a lot of coverage right now, live connectivity into systems does not align with the bulk of critical finance recurring processes, right? Month-end reporting, quarterly board decks, business reviews. We often have to be in a place where we can snapshot and lock down data so that we can deploy it across different tools. And one of the big challenges that organizations face, especially in environments with institutional capital involvement, is that source data is not the same as output data. Different audiences like to see information different ways. You might be applying different mapping or tagging, overlays, EBITDA adjustments, all these things that sort of kind of combine with the source data to bridge the gap to output data. And so that's a big challenge in terms of thinking about AI, just because you can't go straight to the source data and end up with output that you can put side by side with your Power BI dashboard or side by side with your board deck. And so that's one of the processes that we enable, and it's one of the critical areas that we're working with on AI enablement.
Yeah, really interesting. A lot of the same data objects and structures, of course, across FP&A, but for a different, size of company, like you said, private equities involved. These are, a bit more mature companies, and that completely changes the data infrastructure and approach you take with them to solve their specific wants and needs with their data, right?
Yeah, I would challenge the concept of maturity in a lot of those companies, especially when they're transitioning from a family-owned or founder-led environment into a sponsor-backed environment. And we've seen companies across any sort of spectrum of size where there's a high degree of fragmentation. There are multiple systems in play. Maybe they had an acquisition strategy and they haven't fully integrated across all their systems for a variety of reasons. And so it's a struggle to sort of push those organizations up the data maturity curve. And it's one of the foundational aspects that we get involved in when it comes to the concept of central source of truth for finance, and making sure that when we're creating an individual process or deliverable, that we're doing it with a lens towards how data service should work across finance.
Yeah, makes sense. Really interesting. So the flexibility is important for you to meet them where they are, right? Well, whoever comes to First Water Finance.
That's right. And it's one of the reasons that we turn to CData, because we step into a variety of system environments, varying degrees of data maturity, and we saw a flexible solution that would have the connectivity into the systems that we would come across, but that we could also fit into standardized processes, workflows, and data architecture that allows us to deploy much more quickly than somebody who might be starting from scratch.
Yeah, very cool. Would love to dive into more details about that solution that you've built to, match, like we said, those very flexible, different deployments, this controlled time element that's a priority for you, especially in compared to what we just saw with Marcelo, where, time is of the essence, the real time day to day is sort of important in a startup environment. Walk us through your typical solutions and how that differs and why for your clients.
Sure. So like Marcelo, we worship primarily at the Microsoft altar, which fits our mold because most of the organizations that we are, if not all of them, that we deploy into have Microsoft. So we have the ability to step into those environments, not require big incremental technology investments. It's very cost effective from a technology perspective. And then there are different degrees of sophistication by which we can develop processes, everything from fully automated to kind of manual elements to it, to sort of meet them where they are, as well as to work alongside their team and their capabilities and their ability to own those processes on an ongoing basis if we're not going to be the ones to do that. So up on the screen is sort of our standard process chart for how we make this all work with control time and central self-service for analytics and finance. And so you can see the role that CData Sync plays here, where we call it structured replication, which is really about the automation and control around when we're pushing data from the source systems into a central repository. For us, that's OneLake inside of Microsoft Fabric. And then going back to that concept of source data not being output data, we have a number of what we call data prep modules, whether that's mapping, adjustments, overlays, workforce planning, anything else that might impact the source data to sort of get it to its end user ready form. And then inside of OneLake, we're able to use data flows and automate all the transformation work that gets that data through CData, that source data, all the way automated to user ready end form. And then our big thing is we want to meet you where you are from your preferred tools. And so whether that's Excel and Power BI and LLMs, we want to make sure that whatever you want to use, that you're able to connect into that system and make sure that you can align that data across all of your tools. We do not want the EBITDA and the monthly reporting package to be different from page 2 in the board deck and different from the Power BI dashboard that the management team is working on. So that's the core of our process set. And just sort of speaking to what we're doing now with some AI enablement, we're using Python to create data frames and provide the context and prompts that we're then feeding into Claude, but it's a process that is LLM agnostic, and we're actually moving towards developing our own small language model. We think organizations will lean more on small language models for their ability to train them on their historical data and provide additional security and comfort around it living locally as opposed to an additional cloud repository.
Yeah, really, really cool. I think it's cool too. You see the same elements that Marcelo was showing earlier, Sage Intacct, Power BI, what works for them, but you have a completely different architecture here for achieving different outcomes, more based on consistency, control time, states of the books, and using a different CData part of the platform to achieve that, which I think is really cool that, these are all under the same umbrella, but we have such diversity in the solutions depending on what you want to achieve for your company and your clients.
Yeah, and just because we're talking about AI today, we're really focusing in on really getting out things that are valuable. And part of that is making sure that information is aligned across tools and analyses. And for anybody who's pushed data into LLMs for analysis, they aren't particularly consistent at math. And so we live in a world in finance where we can't have calculation volatility. When we ask the question, we need to get the same answer based on that math. So part of what we're doing is kind of putting those intermediate process steps in place using Python and quite frankly our standard data architecture in order to ensure that. It also allows us to provide the context and the prompts that we can change over time so that we get output that matters. If you just feed the data into the LLMs and say, what do you think? You're often going to get output that isn't particularly helpful. A quick example of that is if I take a discounting strategy to go chase market share and I decrease price per unit, and then I just push that data into an LLM, it's going to say, hey, it looks like that you are losing and decreasing your pricing. Do you know that that's typically bad for a business to do? And we would say, well, that was kind of our strategy. And so we actually want to be able to provide the context around that strategy so that we can say, is it working? Where is it working? Are we picking up more volume where we're discounting pricing? And so those are the types of things alongside our other outputs in monthly business reviews and quarterly board decks that we want to be able to deploy that AI output to be side by side with those other outputs so that they provide more value.
Yeah, really cool. Really interesting to see how you're looking at it through a finance lens, right? Which is very different from how other departments and functions would. Talk to me more about what kind of AI you're looking to achieve and starting to build out. It sounds like you're already well on your way, but what are the things that are exciting you most?
Yeah, so we're really on a mission to optimize the monthly business review. Is that for most organizations, especially when you have a number of stakeholders, lenders, investors, and the like, you might have this monthly business review that's the same 50 pages every month. And there can be valuable commentary within it, but we think that that entire process can be reframed to be more connected to more real-time strategy and decisions that are being made in the business. And so part of that is the speed at which you can do this with automation and the speed by which AI enablement can help you unearth insights without having to have a whole team create a bunch of pivot tables and look at every possible dimension and drill down every possible way just to try and figure out what's going on. A lot of the things in finance, when we're looking at things like bridge and waterfall analyses or variance analyses, if something seems kind of neutral at the top line level, it often gets ignored because it's not material. But when you start digging into that, there could be big positives and big negatives that are all adding up and aggregating into that neutrality, but they're very meaningful for the business. And so that's one of the ways that we're using the automation and speed around AI enablement and output to unearth those things to drive better dialogue faster within the organizations.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Really cool to see that, especially like you said, different rules and sort of things you have to play by for in financial analysis. You can't allow for variance, you can't allow for these things, but you can still use AI and figure out ways to implement it that's really helpful for people while working within those constraints of your role and your customers.
Yeah, and one of the things that Marcelo referenced and that you referenced as well, Billy, is that the skill sets in the finance function are changing quickly. And yes, you may not need to code, but you might need to understand how code works so that you can alter it and update it and maintain it, update context, prompts, and continuously improve the process as you get more information or things change within the business. You have other skill sets like data governance and platform familiarity, such as CData, and that really becomes core to the team, especially as things in the business change, such as needing to bring in all the data for a new acquisition. And so what we're seeing is that regardless of AI, these sorts of processes are heightening the importance of skills that already should be core to finance, such as data transformation, workflow automation, and process design. And this is just accelerating that faster than we can imagine.
Yeah, made sense. So exciting, Ben. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you to both of our speakers, Ben and Marcelo, today for joining us, sharing some of these insights and stories of what you're doing. Really, really cool to see the real things that people are building and able to do with these different data architectures to achieve different outcomes. We're going to send you all to the closing keynote now. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you there.